Hello, everyone. Welcome to the tavern. This is the player of X here, and I just wanted to go on a little rant about this whole wheelchair thing that's happening, the combat wheelchair. Um, you know, there's always some drama happening in all communities, and this is just another one of those new ones. I know it's been around in 5th edition for a bit, and it's nice to see that Paizo is adding it directly into a supplement book. But as always, the things come about and people instantly go, oh, how does it work? And why would people add this and all this other nonsense. So I want to get out the way right away that first, 100% this is a DM prerogative type situation where it's the DM's decision if this thing can be added or not, since it's a supplement. If these things just don't work in their world, then, whatever, it's DM's decision. Now, to counter that, it's also the player's decision to not play in that game. If the DM doesn't allow something, it doesn't mean that the player has to play in that game. If they don't like what the DM is doing, they can leave, and eventually, if people don't like the way the DM runs, eventually he has no players and he can't DM anything. So, first things first, I have a character in my world that I DM, an Avum, who is a town guard who is wheelchair bound. He was, his legs from the knees down were destroyed and dissolved due to a black dragon. He's near a swamp place and stuff, but he still functions. He's still the head of the guards. He still can fight, and that's due to a combat wheelchair. Now, there's two sides of this coin on inclusiveness and roleplay and perspective-wise. Now, inclusiveness is fine. Any race, any combination, any ancestry, gender, disability, anything that would affect the character, it's up to the DM to decide. It's at their table. For me, I don't care. As long as it doesn't become a joke. Here's the problem with allowing these things at the table. One, players will sometimes want to play these things for one, to get an advantage, maybe metagaming. Let's say the combat wheelchair is very powerful, doesn't let you get tired, allows you to move up elevations without an issue. Then it becomes the problem where, let's say the players have to climb a mountain. Just an example. They have to climb up the side of a mountain, and one of the players is a combat wheelchair. The combat wheelchair can go up the mountain just fine. No checks required. They have an easy time. What's going to happen is all the other players that don't have this and have to make the athletics checks and have to climb and have to do all these problems, they will in turn be like, well, why can't I just buy a combat wheelchair? Or why don't you make me one? Why does this player get an advantage? Because their character has a roleplay wise disadvantage, because the combat wheelchair doesn't really have a penalty in combat or in other scenarios mechanically compared to the other players. Just roleplay wise, they have this ability. Again, my table wouldn't care, but I can see how it could be an issue. Two, the idea of stairs and dungeons and going in there and being risk averse and all this other stuff and going through a forest in a wheelchair get some players, and mostly DMs, questioning how any of this stuff would work. Like, well, you're in a wheelchair, how could you go through a swamp, right? Verisimilitude, that's not how wheels work in the swamp. Honestly, I think you're worrying too much. So many DMs worry about the nitty gritty and the fine details of how every single thing needs to work in their mind because of this reality. Dude, don't worry about that. Why are you so worried about what the players can do? Why are you so worried about a wheel going through the swamp? Like, come on. Like, there's so many other things, especially in 2nd edition Pathfinder, where you have so much more to pay attention to. Secret roles, concealment, hiding, monster abilities, immunities, all this stuff. It's stuff that you have to worry about compared to, well, wheelchairs can't go through swamps. Like, it's so funny that people worry about this stuff. Don't worry about it. Just if a player wants to be in a wheelchair, fine. Back to my first topic, actually. This is a bit of a ranty video, as I'm kind of all over the place because it's so ridiculous. The advantages of the wheelchair. Okay, I remember. Sorry. It's the idea that a player that isn't disabled is going to portray a character that is disabled. It needs to come from a place of genuine respect and genuine thoughts and feelings behind wanting to play this. If you wanted to play a character that had, let's say, some type of brain damage, depending on how the player role plays it, it can easily, very fast, turn into a joke. And if that's the type of table you're running, where everyone's just like, oh, he's acting like he's got a mental disability or anything like this, and the player is acting it out in that way that is disrespectful, that is something that needs to be brought up at the table, and it's not something that can be talked about before it happens, right? You don't know how a player is going to act once these things are happening and once the situation comes up, because you're people are seeing this and going, well, my players are just going to act like they're disabled. Oh, I can't reach it because it's too high and I'm in a wheelchair. You know, it's about respect, and it's about respect on people who are less fortunate, you could say, you know, not less fortunate, who don't have everything that you could have. So, like, it's such a tricky subject to talk about because here's the problem. When we talk about players at a table, if a player wants to play a disabled person, it can come off as a joke. And if it becomes a joke, it becomes a problem. And it can become insensitive to the other players around the table. And this is why a session 0 is very important, to understand everyone's boundaries and what the players want to do. And for as a DM to be able to lay your foot down. Be like, no, you cannot act that way if you're going to play this character. So, as a DM, if you're afraid of that, don't put it in your game. If not, be open-minded about that. Now, the other thing about the combat wheelchair is, I guess, people with the old school mindset of it doesn't make sense or any of that other stuff. I honestly would just say, you know, don't put it in. Like, I don't know why this is even a thing, honestly. If you don't want to add it, it's a supplement book for one thing. But if you don't want to add it, then just don't add it. And, like, as players, if your players are going to be disrespectful and be assholes about it, then just, you know, don't put it in if you want them to keep being your player where you, like, no. Another subject here. Players who are disabled wanting to play a character that is disabled. Now, there are many players out there with disabilities, and some are wheelchair bound. This allows them to feel like they're represented in the game. And most people will say, well, this is a game where you can play a demon and half giant and cast spells and all this other stuff. But it's the same idea of people that get upset when Spider-Man is not Peter Parker and is Miles Morales. It's the same idea of, well, why Spider-Man have to be a different ethnicity? What's wrong with him being white? It's a different story. It allows people to put in different stories of, you know, the problems that come up with this, the adversity that they would face. It allows for better storytelling. And it also allows for people to put themselves into the game, which a lot of people do. I don't know if you've seen it, but a lot of people, let's say on Roll20, most of their characters are OC furries. That's what they want to be, and that's who they see themselves as, and they want to play this game, which allows them to be this other person, this persona. And some people can, or honestly, like, well, we should just all be humans and fighters. Like, allow players to do whatever they want. Allow them to think. And if a disabled player wants to play someone who's in a wheelchair, allow them to. But also, as a DM, don't go, well, you're in a wheelchair. Guess what? They make combat wheelchairs. This is a fantasy in which they can be whatever and do whatever they want. And if the player who's in a wheelchair is like, no, my character is going to have wings or, you know, or have legs that work. Why would I want to play, you know, I play this every day. I'm in a wheelchair every day. Like, why would I want to play a character? Then allow them to. Be open-minded. Talk to your players. Like, I don't know how this is so hard to understand. It's internet arguing. It's bickering at each other about something that is so nonsense that doesn't even matter. You have so much more to worry about than should we allow a wheelchair in my game. Like, ugh. Yeah. So, guys, we just installed a ramp in the front of the tavern, actually. So, anyone's invited. We don't care. We don't I can't even say the word because it's such a joke. Like, this whole topic is a funny running joke where people are upset at nothing, but it's the internet. So yeah, guys, let me know what you think. Comments below. I'm sure there's going to be some ranting about how, well, they shouldn't add it in, and left wing, whatever. So I'll catch you guys on the next one. See ya.